The first book, The Dangers Are, Ben is consciously colliding with society. He's picking a fight. And then in the second book, figuring out a way to get away from those dangers. And then the third book, the danger ultimately is ourselves. We can't blame our failure on society or, outside forces. It's, we failed. And I think, what part of the lesson of the three books, part of the lesson of that period of my life is that it's better to fight the good fight and lose and learn from it than to give up. My name's Guy Maynard. I'm a retired editor. I've been retired for about 12 years. My last paying job of any substance was as editor of the University of Oregon's magazine, Oregon Quarterly, which I was very proud of the work we did there. Risk of Being Ridiculous takes place in a 6-week period at the very end of 1969, beginning of 1970, and it was a pivotal time in my life in terms of sort of the two kind of threads of ridiculousness that the character pursues is our love, with a specific woman, and trying to change the world. And that in that period, that 6-week period, there were sort of major turning points in both of those. His relationship both to this woman and to the movement that was then the anti-war movement, the anti-racist movement, which was a story of sort of a pivotal period of my life in my late teens, early 20s. And I never really intended to write the rest of it, but Risk of Being Ridiculous sort of ends. There's some ambiguity in how it ends. After I retired, I just started sort of plugging away on what happens after that. And that's how I ended up writing this trilogy based on, the real events in my life. So this passage from Ash Valley takes place about a month or so after we moved on to a 135-acre ranch with 25 other people. And when we first moved on, there was just one house, one sort of like a 3 or 4 bedroom, sort of almost normal kind of house, and then a sort of a ranch house with a couple bedrooms. So the living arrangements were quite challenging. And so, there was a lot of tension over being on top of each other all the time. So one of our earliest priorities was to start building houses around the property for us to move into. Watching Stephen cut the first tree down, I was awed and a little scared by the power of the roaring chainsaw, the chain whizzing around its huge 36-inch bar, a whining blur slicing easily through the bottom of the tree, and the smooth, sure way Stephen cut a notch on one side and then a straight cut on the opposite side to send it crashing down in a narrow, clear spot in the midst of the thick cluster of trees and brush that surrounded us. He held out the still rumbling saw to me, pointed to another pole-sized tree a few feet away, and said, "Okay," with a smile that had a little reassurance in it. I had never used a chainsaw before, any kind of power saw for that matter. Truth is, I could barely use a hammer. And yet, just over 2 months on Oregon soil and we were getting ready to build our own house. Anybody who had known me for the first 21 years of my life would have laughed at the thought of it. But I couldn't continue to be mechanically inept and incompetent and do what I wanted to do on this land and with this commune. I had sort of hoped I could be the grunt of this work outing, carrying the gas can and axe and humping the poles out of the woods while Stephen did the saw work. But with firm kindness and patience, Stephen insisted I take the saw. We both knew I had to learn. Well, it wasn't okay at first. I got the saw bound up, cutting the top part of the front notch too deep. I killed it. Doing the back cut, I over-revved the saw and it kicked back at me. Stephen just smiled when I looked at him, thinking he might want to take over. When I finally managed to get all the way through, the cut pole pivoted on its trunk and fell about 90 degrees off from where I was aiming and hung up in a nearby monster tree. Stephen was still smiling, amused but encouraging, as we worked the pole out of its entrapment and got it to the ground. "You did it all right," he said. "You're just pushing too hard. Relax, let the saw do the work." I tried to believe that and did better on 2 others I cut down, though never getting close to Stephen's smoothness. We got 6 good poles that morning and dragged them down to the road where we chained them together for me to pull to our house site with our tractor, another exotically powerful and utilitarian tool for me. It wasn't long ago that I'd finally learned to use a stick shift. Man, did I feel on top of the world sitting on the tractor seat, sweaty and sore in ways I'd never been before, looking back at my load, the real stuff of our house. Stephen followed on foot, directing me and carrying the chainsaw with the blade resting on his shoulder, thoroughly digging the sense of power that comes from making something happen through hard physical work. Sarah was waiting at the house site as I drove the poles across the meadow toward her. I don't remember ever being prouder of anything I had ever done in my life. Stephen taught Sarah and me how to skin the bark off the poles with a draw knife, a tool with a sharp beveled blade about 8 inches long between 2 handles. Neither Sarah or I knew that such a tool existed or could have imagined the use of it if we did. It was hard work. You had to get the blade just under the skin of the bark and pull it steadily toward you, ideally without digging into the meat of the wood, which would slow and eventually stop the momentum of the pull, or jerking it up and through the bark layer and out. That was frustrating because you just got little chunks off and had to get a new bite under the bark, and also kind of dangerous because you were pulling the sharp blade with some force directly at yourself. It was sweet if you got a nice steady peel of a foot or two, the bark sort of curling away from the pole like a well-peeled apple skin. But that didn't happen often, especially at first, for Sarah, who straddled the first pole and began pulling determinedly, and Stephen and I went back to the woods to find more. Over the next 4 days, we leveled the site and laid out the frame of the structure more precisely with stakes and strings, finished gathering the poles and cut the ones for the perimeter to rough length. Still learning the lesson of letting the saw do the work, I broke a skill saw blade, not easy to do, on the second one, so we had to cut the rest with a chainsaw. Dug the holes for the uprights in the thick clay soil with a post hole digger, raised the poles and cut them off at finished height. We didn't have a ladder, so one guy sat on another guy's shoulders. Put up the horizontal cross pieces between them, sent the center pole in place of roof members with a notch to sit flat on the outside pole and an angle on the other end to hit the center pole just right. Our vision had a shape in the real world. We had lots of help. Stephen and Wayne were the structural brains, providers of tools, and the patient teachers of skills. Stu provided his strong back and kept us laughing. Dale, Jeffrey, Mike, and Jack all put in time, especially when we needed extra hands. Jane, little Eddie, and Sydney would appear with joints or wine and to cheer us on. Walter could be counted on to bring us snacks and share some wisdom. It was going to be Sarah and my house, but the love that was building it was communal, shared, powerful, proof in the tangible transformation of dirt and wood and space that Ash Valley could work. We could work. In addition to sort of learning how to use a chainsaw, a tractor, a skill saw, a draw knife, and a post hole digger, I learned about chalk lines and plumb bobs and squares and levels and string lines and how to swing a damn hammer with some degree of efficiency. Sarah became highly proficient at skinning logs and showed a natural talent for understanding spatial relations as we, encountering the realities revealed by actually putting the pieces together, continually adapted our plans for the house to make it just what we wanted. When we finished placing the last roof pole, righteously tired after 5 days of steady hard work, we let out a collective whoop, and I hugged Sarah tight, both of us with traces of tears in our eyes. Then we hugged Stephen, Wayne, Stu, the core crew, and we were quiet for a minute or two, and the creak steady song became an anthem of triumph for us. Unthinkable, this 8-sided skeleton of a structure in front of us, such a short time ago when we were all so far away from this magic little meadow.